My name is Alex. I'm an alcoholic. Those are the only time I'm ever going to hear nice words from Preston, so I'm going to soak it in. My sobriety date is July 19th of 2025. Um, I guess I'll talk a little bit of what life was like, what happened, and what life's like now. Growing up, I grew up in a beautiful town called Jefferson City, Missouri, and I grew up with a beautiful family. And my childhood was not chaotic, and it was pretty stable for the most part. I have two parents who are very hard workers, and they work their ass off to supply for me and my sister. And they did everything they could to make sure that like I had a life for success. I mean, I went to private school and I was around good kids, and like they did everything to pretty much make sure I didn't end up this way. But as time went on, like when I was about like in middle school, I started just getting a little rebellious and just hanging out with like other kids. And drugs and alcohol was introduced to me, and I didn't think much of it. I always wanted to be accepted by people, and it wasn't anything that came from my childhood that made me feel that way. It was just, I mean, ever since I can remember, I just always had this urge to be accepted, and that was kind of the thing that it seemed like you had to do to get accepted. And I remember the first time doing it was just, I mean, it's not a memory I'm going to forget. And it was fine at first. Come the high school, man, it just become more available. And I knew as I was starting to get into stuff and try different things that like I established these boundaries of like, all right, I'm not going to steal from anybody. I'm only going to use my own money and not do it between these hours. And just slowly as time went on, those boundaries started to go down. And it didn't take long before I'm slipping 20s out of my mom's purse, hoping she doesn't notice before I go to school, and then just not going to school. January 25th of 2019, I had overdosed, and I wish I could say that was the first and last time, but it wasn't. I was so far from seeing what the problem actually was come, later that year. As most of in 2020, the next year was COVID, and that was about my sophomore year of high school, and I had already like left school and was online, and it was great for me. I got to isolate and I got to get drunk, and nobody like blamed me for doing it. And I didn't see the problem for a while. I was seeing this therapist at the time, and things just kind of start getting more intense. There's more feuds that's starting in the family. Just I'm losing people and problems are happening, and I'm talking to her about it. And I'm 17 at this point, and she's like, "You need to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous." And I'm like, "That's for like the hardcore people you see on TV. That's not for me." But I tried it out anyway. I went to my first meeting at a Primary Purpose in Jefferson City, and there was two people there, and one guy did not leave the coffee stand. And it was an interesting first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I left that meeting pretty short into it when they were reading how it works, and I heard the word God. At this point in time, I wanted nothing to do with God. I went on my own route, and I wasn't having it. I didn't want to hear anything about it. And so when I heard, oh, that's what this stuff does, I'm out. So I left shortly after that meeting. I continue just to kind of do my own thing. I get this job at a broadcasting station. I'm working late at nights, and most of the people there drink. It was another acceptable environment to drink, and I'm putting away hours at there. And then I start dating this girl, and I end up getting her pregnant. And I remember when that happens, just having like, oh crap, like I need to be an adult now. I need to get a promotion. I need to quit, I need to quit getting high. I need to quit getting drunk. I need to get my life together. And I was serious about it. I had every intention of getting straight and being a good dad. And that just didn't happen. As much as I wanted to be sober, I just couldn't seem to do it. And eventually me and the girl I was dating at the time, I mean, we made the decision that we can't bring a baby into this world with the state that I was in. And I was so ashamed for such a long time that I just stopped caring. And it wasn't shortly after that things went downhill quick. I'm getting into harder stuff, and I'm, just showing up to work all the time, messed up, and passing out on the job to the point where my boss says, you either need to sober up or we're not going to schedule you anymore. And I go home, try to sober myself up, got really sick. That didn't work. And after about the third or fourth time of my mom seeing me do that, she's like, we're sending you to treatment. And at the time, I thought treatment was like a place you had to be court ordered to. I didn't know you could just walk in there and go. So they end up finding me this beautiful place in Illinois, or outside Chicago. It was a great treatment center, and it went so well that I left after 17 days. And I thought I was cured, and I left there, and I'm like, all right, man, can't do that hard stuff again. I can just stick with these few things. Lasted for about 2 days. Things continue to get drastically worse, man. I mean, my mom changes the locks on me, and I'm blacking out, and I'm being told I said things that I had no recollection of saying. I did things I had no recollection of doing, told my car, just a bunch of awful stuff. And then I went to treatment again, and this time it's like, all right, can't do anything now, can't even do the soft stuff, quote unquote. So it's time to get sober. And then I did what every responsible addict does when they're in treatment, and I met the love of my life for about a month. Met her for about a month. That did not go well, so I did not end up doing well. And it was a repeating pattern from that point. This is about like towards the end of 2023, all the way up till November of 2024. I was just institutionalized. It was the only way I knew how to be sober, and the only way I knew how to stay sober. And I had this repeating habit of going into treatment, finding the love of my life, getting kicked out, and then going into a different treatment center. And that lasted all the way until I came home in January of 2025. I had went into treatment, and I had enough. I'm like, man, I cannot continue to live like this. Life is getting too sad and depressing. Like, I really have to make a change. So I go to treatment that time, don't end up getting a girlfriend, do really, really well. And then I start going to meetings, and, my dad got me a job as a dishwasher, and I'm just trying to do everything I can except the 12 steps. I'm like, I can do, because I always wanted to think I was different. I always wanted to think I was special. I was so scared that if I got into AA and I got sober through here, that I wouldn't be special. I mean, I started getting into drugs and alcohol because I wanted to be different. I wanted to stand out. And I'm like, if I come here and I get sober through you guys, like, I'm just not going to stand out, and I can't take credit for it. If I can't take credit for it, I can't give myself validate. I had every excuse in the book to not do the steps. And that lasted, I mean, and life was going good for a while up in that point. I went from being a dishwasher and got this great job working for the state, making more money than I ever made at the time. And I had the justification in my head, like, because orientation was coming up for that job, and I was super nervous. And it's like, at this point, I mostly just did substances that doesn't need to be named, but just most substances. I wasn't much of a drinker at the time. And I remember having the thought, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, so I can drink and I'll be fine, and it'll calm the nerves and all that stuff. And I mean, it's not a couple months, man. I'm called into the office at my state job, and they're like, we need to suspend you because of these things you said. And I'm looking at this list. I'm like, I don't remember saying any of these things. So I mean, I'm isolated once again, no job, but they're still paying me, which was weird. But I was dating this girl at the time, and then she broke up with me because at this point, I mean, I'm blacked out more than I am sober, and days are just fading by at this point. And she breaks up with me, and that movie Leaving Las Vegas with Nicolas Cage, I was like, I'm gonna go do what that guy did because that looks awesome. And I did. I went and found this hotel in Anderson, Missouri, very small town. I didn't think anybody would find me there, and was just, this is it, man. I was tired of being a burden on my family. I was tired of being a burden to everyone around me. And I couldn't do it anymore. And it was the only thing I knew how to do at that point. I'm there for like a week, and then I wake up in the hospital, and I have no idea how I got there. And I don't know what's going on. Apparently my family came and saw me. I don't remember that. It was just an awful deal, man. And they said I was close to dying. And then, I mean, this wasn't my first overdose. So I'm thinking, like, man, these guys are over exaggerating. Like, I don't know what they're talking about, but it was true. And at this point, I just don't know what else to do. So I go back to what I've always done. And I'm like, can you take me to treatment once I get out of the ICU? And that's where they take me. They took me up to this place in Joplin that I've been to many times. I'll never forget this experience, man. When I was there the time before that, there was this girl I was in treatment with, and then we ended up doing the virtual IOP afterwards. And I was going to meetings and I was getting a job, but I had never opened a big book. I had a sponsor, but I didn't know a sponsor was supposed to walk you through the steps. I thought it was just a guy you called for your problems. Um, but I remember in one of the groups just going off on her, just being like, you're making all these excuses to not go to meetings and you're not putting effort into this, and I'm staying sober and I'm working hard as a dishwasher and you're doing nothing, just off on my high horse. And then the day I walked back into that treatment center for the last time in the cafeteria and she's there and I was like, how you doing? She's like, oh, I'm just here chairing the alumni meeting tonight. And that was this sense of humiliation. It finally hit me that like I have no idea what I'm doing. I thought for the longest time, because I'd been to treatment so many times and I was going to meetings since I was 17, that I knew something. And that was the first time it hit me. I don't know anything, and I don't know what to do or where I'm going. My 30 days gets up there and I'm trying to stay longer. And they're like, you got to leave. You've been here too many times. You've been in our other facility too many times. But there's this place in Missouri, in Springfield, that will take you. And that was the last place I ever wanted to step foot in. But at this point, I have nowhere to go. I have no place to live. So I decided to go there. End up meeting two great gentlemen who I now work with. And I want to respect anonymity, but I was told if I did not shout this guy out that I was going to be in big trouble. So met my good friend Jake, my coworker. And I'll never forget, man, just like it was the first person, and maybe it was just the first time I was listening, I don't know, but it was the first person I ever met like be so enthusiastic and passionate about what life can be like sober. And for anybody who knows Jake, you know he loves to quote this part in the big book about being rocketed in the fourth dimension and that we have found much of heaven. I remember the first time he told me that, I'm like, whoa, dude, you gotta chill on this sobriety thing. Like, like I don't know about all that. But I mean, at this point, man, I'm just out of options and I don't know what to do. The director at this treatment center asked if I want to sponsor. I'm like, sure, I'd love another guy who I can call and talk to my problems about. And then I met my sponsor, Preston, later that night. we came here to this meeting on the Tuesday night. And I remember I came into this meeting and it got to my turn to share, and I do what I always do. I'm trying to think of like some like philosophical deep thing to say. I'm 30 days sober and I'm trying to think of some deep philosophical things to say to impress people. And then somebody pulls me after the meeting and they're like, you don't have to impress anyone here, but you can come here and listen. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that. And you know, for once in my life, I just wasn't afraid to admit that I didn't know anything. So I start doing the steps, and I remember the first time me and Preston met, and we're opening the big book. It's he tells me, he's like, we're gonna read the first few chapters, and we're gonna find out if you're a real alcoholic. And I'm thinking, that's stupid. I know I'm a real alcoholic. I mean, look how much I've drank, and look at all the stuff I did. And that I didn't know at the time, but that has nothing to do with it. I had no idea what this thing entailed. I had no idea what alcoholism really was. And we start reading the book, and things just start speaking to me, man. Like, just talking about ways that I felt even before I started drinking. This idea of powerlessness, like I was able just to like make sense of kind of everything. It's, you know, just, I never once considered that maybe this thing wasn't outside of my control. And that was such a weird moment because it was like this feeling of like impending doom, but also this little feeling of hope that like this is outside of my control. But I was going to this treatment center, this outpatient, living in the sober living and having Preston as a sponsor, and I'm able to like put two and two together at this point. Like, if these people have the same problem that I have, but their life is looking like this, maybe there's something to it. And at that point, man, it's like it sunk with me that if I didn't do this, that this was all that was left. I tried every other option. I tried everything imaginable to get sober except for this. That feeling of wanting to be special and be unique had just left. I didn't care at that point. I just didn't want to die. I was so afraid of dying. And so we start working through the steps, man, and it gets to be the step 4. And I remember hearing all this big bad stuff about step 4. And I mean, I can't say I was necessarily excited to do it, but I mean, the thought just entered my head. Like, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. And it's as simple as that. So I wrote out a long, lengthy and raw step 4 and shared it with Preston. And I remember as we're doing my fifth step in my garage, I'm like pausing in between every single one of them because I'm waiting for him to have this reaction of like, oh my God, you're such a bad person, or you did all these awful things. And he's just sitting there with that blank fucking face. And I'm just... But man, it was the first time it was the first time in my life, man, I ever just felt like I belonged somewhere. I didn't know this at the time, but shortly after doing that fifth step, man, like I'm going into meetings and I'm introducing myself without any lack of like social anxiety, and I'm getting phone numbers. I'm actually calling the phone numbers I get. I just start to get real passionate about this deal because I had felt something after that fifth step, and then it says in the book that we go meditate for an hour in 6 and 7, and I remember after doing that, just feeling something that I'd never felt before. And I mean, I called Jake about it. I'm like, dude, I feel weird, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I just feel some type of way. And it was the first time in my life I stopped blaming people. Up until that point, man, I always blamed everybody else for ending up how I ended up. I blame my parents for sending me to a certain school, and I blame this girl for leaving me, and I blame whoever the hell I could just to like not take responsibility for ending up where I'd ended up. And that burden being lifted off my chest that I didn't even know was there was a beautiful thing. And it was when I really started to see like, oh, there's something to this. Like, I gotta keep going. We get up to the amends step, and I take this trip to Jeff City, and I get in my car that was left there. And I mean, that's all I did was I just went and just knocked on people's doors, people who did not want to see me. And I really didn't want to see them either. And I would call Preston between every amends, be like, I got to go see this person. Not really want to. Can I skip this one? He's like, well, you can always go drink. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So I'll go to this person. And dude, just man, the amends step is a wild step because like 9 out of 10 times the unexpected really does happen. The relationships that were mended because of that. I didn't think I have people in my life today who are some of like my closest friends who from that step, and I didn't think it was possible. I was so scared to go to these people and admit my faults and everything I had done. And I mean, just the healing that came from that was beautiful. And, I remember making amends to my mom, and we hugged and we cried for like 30 minutes. And, she starts going on about like, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And like for the first time in my fucking life, I was able to take responsibility and just, I put myself here. I did this to myself. It didn't matter who was my parents. It doesn't matter who was my family. It doesn't matter if I grew up here or there. I did this to myself. And that felt good to do. And that was over a weekend. And that Monday coming back, that morning, I woke up at 5:00 in the morning, which I never do. And I was excited to have waken up, and I was grateful that I was awake and was thinking of the opportunities throughout the day, which I never did. And I go out on my back porch and smoke a cigarette, and I'm watching the sunrise, and I don't know why, man. I just started crying. Like for the first time in my life, I had gotten that same sense of peace and serenity that drugs and alcohol had gave me like so many years before that I never thought I was going to get again. I was so scared when I came into sobriety that I was giving up this one thing that made me feel okay. And right there and then I felt perfectly okay. And it was the weirdest. I mean, it was a spiritual experience. It's weird when it happens. And I remember just thinking like, this is what they're talking about. And this is cool. Up at this point, I meet with my sponsor again. He's like, you need to start going out and sponsoring dudes. I'm like, why the hell would I do that? I'm like 90 days sober. Like, what do I have to contribute? And it's that what I just explained right there, that spiritual experience. I mean, that's something that I didn't think could happen. And what came with that, which I didn't put 2 and 2 together at the time, I didn't put it together until I was on the phone with my dad one day after a Detroit Lions game. And we're just talking about the game. And I say the words, but I don't think the thought. The words just come out of my mouth that like, I haven't thought about drinking in like 3 weeks. And at this point, I'm going to an IOP class every morning. I'm going to an I'm going to AA meeting every morning. And I'm going to work as a line cook at a place where people are drinking. So, I mean, like it's around me. I'm talking about it, and like, it's just not something I think about. And it was the most mind blowing thing that I could ever get to that point. People talked about in meetings all the time that the obsession will be lifted. I thought it was bullshit. I thought when people picked up like a 9-year chip, like someone did tonight, it's like, man, that guy is really good at just dealing with misery and obsession. And this wasn't even the longest I had been sober. I was only sober for like 3 months at this point, but it was the first time that like in my life, I really felt happy to be a part of life and grateful. And that feeling of waking up every morning excited has not gone away. I remember, and you know, we make a decision to live on God's will and not ours when we get here. And I'm so grateful for that, because the opportunities that arise because of that are so much better than anything I ever could have planned for myself. I remember going and making amends to my sister in Kansas City, and we sat down and I did the whole thing. And I asked, what can I do to make this right? And she said, I don't think there is anything. It's going to take time, and I don't know how long it's going to take. And I left that, and I was driving home, and I was sad, and I was angry at myself. I was angry at her. I was sad. And I called somebody, and I'm like, I don't know what to do about this, man. And he's like, well, you should come to the meeting tonight. Like, I don't want to fucking do that. Like, I want to go home and be sad about myself and all this stuff. And he said, well, we'll be meeting at 7 if you decide to join us. And he hung up. I'm like, okay. So I come to Parkrest at 7, end up meeting this kid who was my first ever sponsee. And I'm like, all right, here we go. This is what we're doing now. And just start doing the things that are in front of me, man. I clinge on to this program and to God for everything. And I'll be damned if I didn't see my sister 2 months later, and I didn't talk to her. I didn't say anything. I was letting her take her time, and she gives me the biggest hug in the world and says, you can consider me amended. I didn't do anything to manifest that. I just continued to come here and look for new guys to read the doctor's opinion with, because I'll never forget reading the doctor's opinion with someone and finally feeling like I was understood. You know, the first real test to all of this and my sobriety was in February. My dad had to get a pretty big surgery, and he had this thing for like 6 years that my family was aware about, but I was too busy getting high to really worry about it. And then now that I'm sober, I all of a sudden want to start jumping in and controlling the problem and saying, you guys need to do this, and you guys aren't worrying enough about it. I'm absent from it for 6 years, and all of a sudden I want to do something about it. And the gentleman who read How It Works today said a beautiful prayer with me. And we sat there in that living room, because I wasn't sleeping, man. I was so worried, and I was mad, because I'm like, man, like my dad has to get this big surgery like as soon as I get sober. And I thought it was some sick joke, but we said a beautiful prayer, man. I went and read the doctor's opinion with a new guy, and I had the best night of sleep that night that I had in a long time. And if you can't tell, my dad's over there now, and he's healthy, probably as healthy as he's been since he's quit smoking. The stuff that has come from trusting in this program and finding God, because like I had no intention of wanting to find God. I didn't have much of an intention of staying sober when I got here to Springfield. I wanted to be sober, but I didn't think it was possible, and I thought everybody who was trying to help me was wasting their time. And then just hearing how enthusiastic people were and how great their lives were, that just thought of like, maybe there's something to this. Is what got me through, man. Just not being able to find employment when I first got here, and living in a sober house with people I didn't necessarily like, and just all the challenges that arise. That hope that you guys gave me of maybe things get better is what I held on to until things got better, and they got better, and they got better quick. Opportunities just start coming left and right as I continue to pray. And I was working as a line cook, and man, I did not like that job. And I remember every day as I was swiping my badge to clock in, I'm thinking, God, how much longer are you going to keep me here for? And, I get a call one day as I'm stepping out of my car from this treatment center in Jeff City, and they say, hey, we want you to come work for us. I go in there and I put my 2 weeks in like immediately. And then I'm at this point, I'm managing this sober house that I was staying in. The fact they trusted me with that is crazy. And I go up to the guy who owns it. I'm like, hey, man, I got this job offer in Jeff City. I'm going to be leaving. And this is the same outpatient treatment center that I was attending at this point only a few times a week. And he's like, well, what if you came and worked here? I'm like, sure. I was flabbergasted that I could go from, you know, being the kid that nobody wanted in their treatment center because I had such a reputation of being a jackass, to the point where two places are wanting to hire me. And I'm so glad I stayed here in Springfield, because through God, man, I've built a beautiful life out here for myself. I was scared that if I stayed here in Springfield and then moved back to Jeff City, that me and my family wouldn't have the opportunity to get close with each other again. But I got to say, man, through the things you guys have taught me in this program, and through living through God's work, I mean, our relationship, I honestly think, is stronger than it would have been if I just never had been alcoholic in the first place. I have a job that I absolutely love, and it brings me purpose. And once Jake leaves, I'll tell you guys how I really feel about the job. No, I'm kidding, man. No, dude, it's crazy. I get to help people for a living, and I get to hang around people who are like me, because I just love this program, man. I love the way of life you guys. I love the way of life you guys showed me, and the opportunities that arise from that, and just, man, I really have everything I want. I remember, like, growing up, I always kind of wanted a brother growing up, and never had one. And then I come here and I start managing a sober house, and God's like, hey, here's a house full of them, and they're all going to drive you batshit crazy. But no, I love everybody who lives in that house, and the relationships and connections I can build through that are just crazy. I mean, and still to be able to come here to Alcoholics Anonymous and just be able to be a drunk, just to be one of you guys. I've never felt like I've belonged anywhere until I came here, and you guys showed me this way. And I'll end off with this, man. On February 3rd of 2019, I was sold that God had abandoned me, and I wanted nothing to do with God. And then I came in here to Springfield, and I realized I was the one who abandoned God through my drug addiction and alcoholism. And you guys said, don't worry, keep coming back, and we'll show you how to get that relationship back. And I have the most beautiful life, thanks to God. With that, I'm going to pass.